Translator, Reverie, Henyi. Shoo, shoo, shoo. The arrows burst forth like streaks of lightning, slicing through the air in rapid succession. In the first clash, Small Saber King had been able to forcibly knock the arrows aside with sheer blade force. But now the disparity in strength between the two had nearly vanished, shrinking until it was almost non-existent. Under such circumstances, how could Small Saber King possibly withstand 3 mystical powers unleashed together? Ling Han's strength had once been far beneath his own, and even though Ling Han had not truly mastered the Thunderclap 9th Heaven back then, he had already proven to be a troublesome adversary. Now Ling Han's cultivation had soared, his power undergoing a tremendous leap. The change was qualitative. Annihilating Dragonstar Arrow had transformed completely. Mystical powers could slay gods. Ling Han's tier was still too low, and he could not yet slaughter divine beings. However, killing Small Saber King would pose no difficulty. 2 radiant shields flashed consecutively across Small Saber King's body, saving him from certain death twice in a row. Yet his expression darkened further and further, because the talisman had already burned itself into ash, and no longer possessed the power to shield him. The next arrow would determine the moment of his death. This duel had been agreed upon as a fight to the death, a battle that would only conclude when one person fell forever. No one from the Academy had voiced objection earlier, and thus there was no one who could step forward to halt the battle now. Rules were rules. If they were broken at will, what trust would remain among people? Small Saber King's gaze sharpened like the edge of a saber. At this moment, the shadow of death did not fill him with fear. Instead, it ignited the flame of battle within his heart as he swept his blade sideways in a ferocious slash toward Ling Han. Hong! The saber light blazed forth like a burning sun, radiating a terrifying and indescribable majesty. Saber! Saberheart! Someone from the older generation suddenly cried out. Not Saberheart yet, but he has touched a fragment of it. Another elder shook his head, though his voice still carried approval. To comprehend Saberheart is to gain the right to brush against the rules of the Great Dao. This is an underestimated genius, said a third elder. We cannot allow him to die, a fourth elder declared decisively. Previously, they had allowed the two to engage in a life and death battle without interference. Although Small Saber King's reputation was impressive, they had regarded it as nothing extraordinary, and even if he were sacrificed, it would not matter. However, the heart of martial arts was no ordinary insight. If placed in the God realm, such a genius might even have the chance to rise among the most outstanding elites. Pu Linghan drew the bowstring in a swift motion and released another arrow. Wrapped in the radiance of annihilation, it appeared before Small Saber King's forehead in an instant and pierced straight through. The arrow was terrifying beyond imagination. It passed cleanly through Small Saber King's skull and burst out the other side, carrying streaks of silver-colored blood as it shot into the heavens, its might showing no sign of weakening. Shoo! Shoo! 3 ancient monsters appeared one after another, all of them heaven-tier cultivators. Yet even they had arrived a step too late. Small Saber King's body plummeted from the sky, the vitality within him draining away rapidly. One of the old monsters seized Small Saber King's body and immediately departed, clearly intending to attempt a rescue. However, Ling Han could guarantee with the authority of his former life as the Alchemy Emperor that the arrow had already obliterated Small Saber King's soul. Even if there existed a divine pill capable of restoring Small Saber King's body, it would merely revive an empty shell. With the soul destroyed, could that person still be Small Saber King? Even if a new soul were to form again, that individual would likely become mediocre in martial arts, perhaps even completely talentless. In short, Small Saber King was utterly dead. The remaining 2 ancient monsters stared coldly at Ling Han. Discontent brewed in their hearts. Yet when both sides had agreed to fight to the death, they had not stepped forward to intervene. What could they possibly say now? Could they blame Small Saber King for being too slow? Why had he not comprehended Saberheart earlier? Why did he have to touch upon it only at the most perilous moment between life and death, leaving them no time to intervene? After all, Ling Han now possessed battle prowess approaching the high levels of the deity transformation tier. Even heaven-tier warriors would need to focus fully to stop him. After gazing at Ling Han for a long moment, one of the old monsters finally flicked his sleeve and said in a displeased tone, "Disperse!" Yes! No one dared utter another word. Everyone lowered their heads and departed one after another. There were still numerous Earth-grade and Black-grade palace halls unoccupied, and they were naturally rushing to seize them. Small Saber King's death was merely that. What did it have to do with them? Small Saber King had died, and his palace hall was now vacant. Yet who would dare harbor thoughts about occupying it? Would they not fear being blasted into fragments by Ling Han's arrows? Ling Han watched the departing old monster, irritation churning violently within his heart. His spoils of war had been taken away just like that. However, no matter how powerful he had become, he was still not stronger than a heaven-tier cultivator. Other than watching them leave, what else could he possibly do? He snorted inwardly and thought, "Damned old man, don't you dare drop even a single hair. If you do, I'll curse you to shotting for 3 days and 3 nights." He descended from the air and said, "Let's head to Small Saber King's palace hall. There might still be some battle trophies left." Small Saber King had obtained the treasure trove of an ancient dynasty. Some treasures were simply too massive to store inside a spatial ring and required a location to be placed. They hurried over eagerly. After asking around, they discovered the location of Small Saber King's palace hall and entered one after another. So this palace hall actually contains a gathering spirit formation. No wonder I couldn't clearly sense the spirit chi purity increasing tenfold. So the secret lies within these palace halls. Everyone exclaimed in astonishment. Cultivating in such a place would truly allow one to achieve twice the results with half the effort. No wonder Small Saber King had broken through to the deity transformation tier so quickly. Those disciples who had been granted direct admission had likely arrived several months earlier. Having cultivated for so long, they had naturally widened the gap between themselves and the others. But Small Saber King had encountered a freak like Ling Han and could only perish with resentment. His luck had simply been too poor. Although the palace hall appeared spacious, it could only accommodate 3 or 4 people, cultivating at once. Otherwise, the spirit chi would still be insufficient. After all, the gathering spirit formation had a limit to the amount it convert. Exceeding that limit would nullify its effect entirely. I counted earlier while passing by. There are only around 500 palace halls in total, but more than 2,000 people passed the trial this time. According to Restore Heaven Academy's estimates, roughly 1,000 students were meant to be recruited this time. However, because Ling Han had destroyed the formation flag during the first stage, more people had passed the trial, causing the number to suddenly double. Too many monks, too little gruel. The competition is going to be fierce now. Yeah. Everyone wants to live in a palace hall and absorb richer spirit chi. Besides, according to what that Academy member said earlier, only talented individuals residing in palace halls will qualify to receive resources. Then it must be fought for. Ambition blazed in everyone's hearts. Even if they could not compete for a heaven grade or earth grade palace hall, could they not aim for a black grade or yellow grade one? Li Fengyu, Qin Lianyu, and the others soon took their leave, all of them rushing off to seize favorable palace halls. Moreover, one could both challenge others to battle and avoid battles entirely. For geniuses like them, 3 months was sufficient time for their strength to undergo tremendous transformation. Jushuan-Er and Hunyu naturally remained behind. The spirit chi within this palace hall was enough for 3 people. As for cultivation resources, with Ling Han in possession of the Black Tower, would they ever lack them? Ling Han, news hungry, Hunyu said while acting spoiled. All right, let's eat first. Ling Han replied with a smile as he took out ingredients and began preparing food. For the moment, he did not intend to seek out the Rain Emperor or Mu Rongqing. The 3 of them would each build their own forces first, and later merge them together, forming a single superpower. Within this academy, students were divided into 4 levels. This system clearly indicated who the strongest individuals were. If someone wished to follow a powerful leader, they would naturally seek out those people. Not bad. It would make recruiting followers much easier. Translator, Reverie, Editor Henyi. On the very first day after stepping into the gates of Restore Heaven Academy, fierce struggles erupted as disciples fought bitterly over the palace halls. Blades flashed, fists thundered, and in several clashes, lives were even lost, laying bare the merciless cruelty of such contests. Such was the path of martial arts. The higher one climbed, the narrower the road became, yet every cultivator yearned to ascend. What else could be done? Only by kicking others down beneath one's feet could one rise higher. Cultivation resources were limited. How could they possibly allow every soul under heaven to become an elite? Thus, no one felt astonished by such bloodshed, and everyone quietly accepted this result. Yet these scenes, which usually occurred when fighting over treasures in ancient ruins, were now unfolding inside an academy that ought to have been a sanctuary of safety. It carried a certain bitter irony. The 5 great sects had never truly intended to nurture all these people. Most of them were nothing more than whetstones, meant to temper the disciples of the 5 great sects. As for the small portion that possessed exceptional endowments, they indeed had the chance to ascend into the god realm, but only as slaves. Not to mention that far too many people had entered this time. If some were not swiftly eliminated, how could the rest possibly endure? After Ling Han and the 2 girls finished eating, they began to search through the palace hall. Yet Small Saber King had not left behind many treasures. Only one item managed to please Ling Han, the golden ship. He had originally possessed one, but it had been smashed apart by the diamond puppet. Now that he had obtained another, it somewhat soothed the wounds in his heart. With his present strength, the golden ship could not assist him much in battle. However, it could hasten travel, saving time, strength, and trouble, an essential companion for any long journey. One night quietly passed. On the morning of the second day, Ling Han had only just awakened when he soon heard a noisy clamor coming from outside. He opened the door and saw that 4 young men were standing before the gates of the palace hall, each with a dark scowl on his face. They were shouting curses loudly, but the moment they saw Ling Han emerge, they all abruptly shut their mouths. Ling Han swept his gaze across them and said, "What, you've come to challenge me? Fine, all 4 of you together. Save me some time." "We're not here to challenge you," one of them declared. "Then what are you doing here whining like this?" Ling Han rolled his eyes. "We are disciples of the Absolute Saber Sect," the second person proclaimed. "Don't think you can run amok just because you defeated Small Saber King. Our Absolute Saber Sect's strongest genius isn't Small Saber King." "That's right. Just wait until Senior Brother Shu emerges from secluded cultivation. Killing you will be as easy for him as turning his palm. Just you wait." The 4 shouted furiously, as though they wished to tear off Ling Han's flesh and drink his blood. Ling Han sighed and said, "Then why the hell are you acting rude right now? I hate it most when someone disturbs my sleep. Looks like I'll have to beat the lot of you." "Stop, we're not here to challenge you." The 4 hurriedly waved their hands. They were merely flower blossom tier warriors. How could they possibly match Ling Han? Ling Han snorted and said, "You run here to curse me, and still claim you're not here to challenge me. Your damn sister!" He charged forward in a flash. Peng! Peng, peng! 1 punch for each person. The 4 were instantly sent flying through the air. He had shown some mercy, merely heavily injuring them rather than killing them. "Is it Shu Shu Ran?" Ling Han murmured to himself. This was not the first time he had heard that name. Yao Huiyue had once mentioned that this man was the Absolute Saber Sect's #1 genius, an extremely low-key figure who was not widely famous and likely only recognized within the 5 great sects themselves. I'd quite like to meet him. Ling Han wandered freely around 9 Dragons Mountain, making acquaintances with various people, and openly revealing his intention to recruit subordinates. Although he had become famous in a single battle by shooting down Small Saber King, and seemed to be on the verge of becoming the #1 disciple of Restore Heaven Academy, everyone present here was a genius, and geniuses were often arrogant. How could they easily bow their heads? At present, everyone shared the same thought. Now that I've obtained such incredible cultivation conditions, I will certainly catch up to you. With such a mindset, who would willingly submit to another? Meanwhile, The Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing had also begun their own astonishing journeys. The two of them had successfully fought over an Earth-grade palace hall and were now studying which heaven-grade palace hall occupant they should challenge first. The Academy's communication network was extremely advanced. Communication stones connected it to the 5 great sects and numerous super cities. From a central hub, they could monitor every movement across the Middle State. Students could also use these communication stones to contact their families and sects, transmitting news and messages. At present, no news was more sensational than what was happening with the Purple Moon Empire. Originally, no one had paid attention to this force. To dare establish a nation in the Middle State, wasn't that courting death? Several deity transformation tier forces had gone to encircle and annihilate them. Yet they had suffered complete defeat. Their experts were all captured, some surrendered, and those who refused were killed, which instead increased the Purple Moon Empire's strength. Now that empire was expanding without restraint, dividing itself into 3 great armies to besiege cities and strongholds. Its efficiency was astonishing. In a short period of time, its territory expanded tenfold, and it was still expanding at an incredible speed. This finally drew the attention of the 5 great sects, causing them to dispatch subordinate heaven-tier forces to destroy it. This event had occurred 3 months earlier, and until now, no battle report had returned. Perhaps the battle had reached a stalemate. After hearing this news, Ling Han could not help but nod slightly. Ma Duobao was an unfathomably deep person. Since he had decided to establish a nation to open the skies, he certainly had not acted recklessly. Yet what puzzled Ling Han was, where had such a group of astonishingly powerful warriors suddenly appeared from? Ma Duobao certainly was not fighting alone, so where had his generals come from? Gathering such a large group of elites who shared the same ideals was no easy matter. Take Ling Han himself, for example. Over the past few days, he had constantly tried to recruit subordinates, yet with little success. Even gaining a single subordinate was troublesome, let alone persuading them to follow him in opening the skies in opposition to the entire world. Does this fellow truly possess such incredible charisma? Ling Han was filled with doubt. In his impression, Ma Duobao was merely a sly and crafty fatso. Could such a man really sound a clarion call that others would follow? The world is vast, and all sorts of people exist. Being reborn in such an era, is it fortune or misfortune? Ling Han murmured. Yet a fierce smile slowly appeared at the corner of his mouth. Fortune or misfortune aside, at least he could fight to his heart's content. If Ma Duobao truly possessed the power to resist the 5 great sects, then it would not hurt for him to lend a hand. After all, Ling Han had no interest in becoming an emperor. He would shoulder this burden only out of moral duty, unwilling to see the living beings of the world suffer in endless misery. If Ma Duobao could accomplish it, then Ling Han would allow him to bear the great responsibility. When they eventually ascended to the God realm, Ling Han could retire after carving his name into history. Then he would go find Divine Phoenix Heavenly Maiden, that overbearing woman, and take as his wife the woman who should have been his long ago, living freely and unrestrained ever after. Or so he imagined. Yet events suddenly took a shocking and dramatic turn. The forces dispatched by the 5 great sects all suffered crushing defeat. 7 heaven-tier forces had participated in the campaign, yet 6 were either annihilated or forced into surrender. Only 1 force managed to escape, and even then, they fled in utter disarray, suffering extremely heavy losses. Now the 5 great sects were finally shaken, deciding that their most powerful forces must personally take action. Unfortunately, the students of Restore Heaven Academy were also conscripted into the army.